Hi folks, Sty here. Well, this is kind of a Sty story. um, One thing that I do when I'm in the outdoors by myself is because it's so quiet and peaceful in the outdoors. Um, and that's kind of a misnomer because there's birds singing all over. I can hear them all around me singing. I can hear the breeze going through the trees, and yeah, there's actually a lot of sound in the outdoors. But it's not the kind of sound that we're used to in the sense that it doesn't distract you. It actually calms you. But one thing I do when I'm out in the outdoors, especially when I'm not tasking to do something specific, is I'll just sit and reminisce. I I think back to events and discussions and things that have happened throughout the years and play them over in my mind and try to bring some of that knowledge back to the front and refresh myself on the things I've learned in all my years and the experiences that I've had um, that help make me who I am. And one of those things that I think a lot of, and the reason it even came to mind this evening while I'm out here at camp, was that I had an individual the other day that I met, very nice person, and he he had some questions. I gave him a ride actually. His vehicle had broken down, and I gave him a ride home. And I told him I was coming out to camp, and we started talking about camping. And I was telling him about some of my videos, and I mentioned Shaga. Well, what in the world is Shaga? He didn't know what Shaga was. It's not surprising. It's surprising how few people really know what Shaga is. So I had a piece in the truck, and I showed it to him, and we had a good discussion about Shaga. Well, that conversation kept growing and growing, and he kept asking more questions, and we ended up actually got to his house, and we sat in the truck for the longest time just talking, and he kept every time he'd ask a question, he'd say, oh, this is probably a stupid question, or this is a foolish question. And I kept telling him, there is no such thing as a foolish question. There's only a stupid question if you yourself hold the answer and the person you're asking in no way would have the answer. So that's kind of stupid to ask somebody something you already know. Um, but then again, there's times we don't realize we know something. And I think back, when I was growing up, I had the fortune of having my two grandfathers around for many years. I wouldn't say that many years. I was a teenager when they passed away. But um, my one grandfather, he was pure outdoorsman. The other grandfather was a farmer. That's all he knew in his life was farming. Well, the outdoors grandfather, he was he was one of those people where if you asked him a question, you always felt like you never got a straight answer. And it was always like he'd give you just enough that you'd say, well, I think I know the answer now, but I'm not certain. And I asked him one time, I said, Grandpa, why can't you just answer my questions and give me a full answer? And he said, because if I tell you the whole answer, you'll forget it in a day. But if I leave a little of the answer out, you're going to want to find out what the end of the story is. So you're going to be inquisitive and keep asking. Or you're going to search it out and you'll find out on your own what the full answer is. He said, and because you had to do that, you've got some ownership in it and you'll remember it the rest of your life. He says you'll never have to ask that question ever again because you answered the question. I gave you part of it, but you finished it. You answered the question. So now I can look back and I see his point. I really do see his point. So often people will ask me a question about the outdoors, and I'm quick to answer. I don't want people to not know something that they want to know, and if I have an answer, I want to give it to them. But sometimes I wonder if I'm not kind of cheating the person if it's like learning a new skill. If you're going to teach somebody to use the bow drill and you show them how you assemble all the parts, how you gather all the materials, how you assemble it together, and then you show them how to make a fire, and you say, there, now you know how to use your bow drill. No, they don't. They don't. And they'll forget a lot of that before they'll ever actually attempt using the bow drill. Where instead, I would be better off saying, you know, this is how you make and use a bow drill. But we need to actually do it. And I'm going to have you use it and start a fire. Now you won't forget it. Everybody seems to have an answer for everything. That's one thing I learned growing up also. My grandfather, now I've heard this different ways, but he taught it to me in a real different way. One day I came out of we had the family home and we had these two cottages. And he lived in one of the cottages on the property. And one day I came out of the back of the house, and there's my grandpa, and he's walking across the property, and he's dragging this great big long rope. And I thought right away, what in the world's he doing with that big long rope? So I run over to him and I said, hey, Grandpa, why are you dragging that rope? His response to me was, for crying out loud, kid, have you ever tried pushing one? And he kept going. He didn't give me the answer. But he taught me a lesson that whatever he was doing it the easiest way. So in order to get the answer of what he was doing with that rope, because he was not going to give it to me, just throw the answer out, I had to follow him. I followed him, and then I found out what he was doing with the rope. He was roping off this section of our property that they were supposed to come in and brush out an area, and he was marking it with that big rope. But there's a case in point. Grandpa, why are you dragging the rope? Well, have you ever tried pushing one? Grandpa, that's not the answer. That's not the answer to my question. I found out the answer. So, life is that way. Life is that way. The same old boy. We were out in a boat fishing. I'm looking over the side. I go, Grandpa, I wonder how deep this lake is. He looked at me just goofy, like, there we go with them weird questions that kid comes up with. And he goes, you know how to swim? And I go, that made me nervous, because I wouldn't be surprised he'd throw me out of the boat. And I go, well, yeah, I can swim. And he goes, then it doesn't matter how deep the lake is. He's right. He's right. If I know how to swim, it doesn't matter how deep the lake is. Now, isn't that so much the way things are? We'll ask a person a question, and we want such a definitive answer, and then when we get that answer, a lot of times we're not happy with it. It's not the answer we wanted. I look back and I think of that old man and the way he would reply to me and answer my questions that I thought were important. What he was doing was, he was making me take ownership in my own knowledge. The things I needed to learn, I needed to learn, not just ask. Don't just ask. Ask to be taught. Now that was the whole key to it. And when I think back, I reminisce about those days. Anytime I would ask my granddad how to do something, in his mind, that was not a question. That was a request. That was a request to learn something from someone else. It's not a question. You're saying, Grandpa, how do I do this? Can you help show me how to do this? He'd be right there. Yes, he will show you how. And you will get your hands dirty because you're going to learn that thing that you asked about. But if you're just asking questions and you get an answer and you're unhappy with that answer, then really I think you're unhappy with yourself. I've found that in myself, where I'll ask a question and I'll get the answer and right away I'll say, oh, that ain't what I wanted to hear. That's no good. And I have to stop myself and say, well, wait a minute. I asked them the question. I didn't have the answer. So whatever answer they give me is as good an answer as the one I had, which wasn't one at all. So why do I fault their answer? Now bringing this to the front today, I see that with people so often. They'll watch somebody do something, whether it's in person or on YouTube. They'll watch somebody do something, and that person isn't doing it or anyone in particular. They're doing it because they want to share something they know. And then all of a sudden, people are saying, well, that ain't the right way, or that's not what I thought was going to happen. Like they're disappointed in what that person shared, what they were showing or what they were doing. And I think that's because it's just like the unanswered question. When we watch videos on YouTube, we see a title and we go, oh, yeah, I'm interested in that. And you go and you watch that video. And you watch it, and it doesn't turn out the way you expected it. And you're disappointed. Well, I don't. I don't like doing that. If I even think that way, I don't like it. I don't comment and say, oh, well, that isn't right. Well, that's the way they did it. That's the way they showed it. And they didn't send me a personal invitation to come and watch their video. I chose to go watch it. And if it's not something I liked, that's fine. That's okay. It's not a big deal. But I might walk away feeling like I have an unanswered question because it might have been a topic that I was looking for an answer. But I have to remember back to what my granddad used to do all the time, and that's give me part of the answer and expect me to go and find the rest of that answer. So that's the kind of thing that Sty does when he's sitting out here in the woods, and there's no one here to chat with. So yeah, some people say, hey, now we know Sty's crazy, he's nuts, he's a crazy old man out in the woods, he ought to stay there. Because in all truth, I talk to dead people when I'm out in the woods. Because I reminisce, and I bring up in my memory times I've sat with people that are long dead and gone. And I ask myself certain questions. Then I'll tell myself, what would they say? And then I envision their response, because they had such a huge part in molding my life, people throughout the years. You know, I've got a few. That bringing that back up to the front and then feeling like I'm back in that conversation with them. And it's like you can hear their response. How would they respond to you? How would they support your interest in something? And you can't do that out in the hustle and bustle of the world. You know, I work 5-6 days a week. I'm with people all the time. Just constant. Lots of information coming and going, and 90% of it never gets absorbed. It's all lost. You come out here and you can go back to the old information that you've learned over all the years and reminisce and revive what at one time were dead memories. Things that you just never allowed to come back up to the front. So I strongly suggest that people think of that when they have that solitary, quiet moment out in the woods by themselves. Let some of that old information come back up to the surface. Revisit it. It's like revisiting old friends and family. And see how you can apply some of that old information in your situation today. There you go. It's kind of a Sty story. You know, I'm talking about back when I was young and how my granddad handled things. He asked me once, you know why the wild turkey crossed the road? And I said, Grandpa, you got that all wrong. It's why did the chicken cross the road? He goes, I could care less about any blankety blank chicken. He says, I asked you, do you know why the wild turkey crossed the road? And I said, well, no. Why did he? And he said, because he's wild. And the woods were on the other side of the road. And I thought, well, that's goofy. And I told him, I said, that doesn't make any sense. He goes, next time you see a forest on the other side of the road, he says, you need to cross the road. And he says, walk into that forest and get a little wild. He said, you'll find out why that wild turkey crossed the road. You know, that old boy was right. So when I see a road that's all farmland on this side and it's all forest on that side, guess where I'm going to cross the road? To the forest side. You bet. Let's head out to the woods, folks. There you go. This is Sty enjoying camp. It's getting cool out. It feels like it's maybe in the low 50s, and it quit raining. The sky broke up. It's nice out now. And Sty's going to be getting his fire going, and I'm going to have some steak for supper. We'll catch y'all later. Maybe I'll share my steak with you in another short video. You all have a nice day. Bye-bye.